In recent weeks, what is usually seen before a major release at Apple has started happening around the foldable iPhone. The amount of information is not just increasing, it is beginning to form a coherent picture. If earlier these were scattered rumors, now we are already seeing an almost fully formed strategy. And the more leaks appear, the more obvious one thing becomes. iPhone Fold for Apple is not just a new product, but a turning point. Moreover, a turning point not only for the company itself, but for the entire industry. According to the latest data from the supply chain, Apple has already decided on the key parameters of the device. We are talking about a book-style fold format, with an internal display of around 7.8 inches and an external screen of about 5.5 inches. But what matters more here is not the numbers, but the approach. Because Apple, apparently, does not want to simply repeat what competitors have already done. It wants to change the very logic of using a foldable device. And this is where things get most interesting. More and more information is appearing that Apple is betting not on hardware for the sake of hardware, but on usage scenarios. That is, iPhone Fold is being designed from the start not as a smartphone that can unfold, but as a hybrid of two devices, iPhone and iPad, in one body. This sounds obvious, but in practice it is a huge shift. Because current foldable devices, including solutions from Samsung, essentially remain smartphones that sometimes turn into a tablet. In Apple's case, according to rumors, everything is the opposite. In the unfolded state, it is a full-fledged work tool, and when folded, a compact device for quick tasks. And this changes everything, because in such a scenario, iPhone Fold begins to compete not only with other smartphones, but also with iPad, which means Apple is effectively launching internal competition within its own lineup. And that is already a risk, but at the same time, it is also an opportunity. Because if iPhone Fold can replace two devices at once, it will open the path to a new product category, a category where the boundaries between devices are blurred. And according to insider information, Apple understands this perfectly. Moreover, inside the company, it is already being discussed that iPhone Fold could become the foundation for a future lineup of flexible devices. These could include larger fold devices, products with new form factors, and even hybrids with elements of augmented reality. And if this is true, then we are witnessing the beginning of a new product branch for Apple. But let's talk about why this is also a risk. Because iPhone is the company's main source of revenue. It is the product that brings in tens of billions of dollars every quarter, and any change in this lineup is a potential hit to its own stability. If iPhone Fold turns out to be too good, users may start abandoning regular iPhones. If it turns out too expensive, it will remain niche. If it is too compromised, it may simply fail to take off. And Apple has to balance between these scenarios. It is a very delicate game. But judging by the leaks, the company is betting that the market is ready. Because right now, several factors are aligning at once. First, display technologies have reached a level where foldable screens can be made more reliable and less noticeable at the crease. Second, processors have become powerful enough to support a new level of multitasking. And third, artificial intelligence. And it is AI that becomes the key element of this entire story. According to the latest information, Apple is actively working to make iPhone Fold the first device where AI is built in, not as a feature, but as the foundation of the interface. This means that the system will not simply react to user actions, but anticipate them. For example, when unfolding the device, the interface may automatically adapt to the current context. Work, communication, content consumption, all of this will influence how the system looks. And this is not just convenience. It is a new level of interaction, because the device begins to understand what you are doing. And here, Apple once again is betting on local AI. This means that most of the computation will happen directly on the device without sending data to the cloud. This provides an advantage in speed and privacy, two key factors on which Apple builds its strategy. But there is another point that is often overlooked. iPhone Fold is an ideal platform for the development of new types of applications, because developers get more space, more possibilities for interfaces, and more usage scenarios. This can lead to the emergence of completely new app formats that are simply impossible to implement on regular smartphones. And this is already affecting the entire ecosystem, because if developers start creating applications for the fold format, it will accelerate the transition of users to new devices, which means Apple gains another tool for reshaping the market. And this is exactly where pressure on competitors begins. Because Samsung, despite its leadership in foldable devices, does not control the ecosystem the way Apple does. Its devices depend on Android, on third-party developers, and on different component manufacturers. Apple, on the other hand, controls everything, and if it offers a more cohesive, more refined experience, it could sharply change the perception of foldable devices. But the pressure will not be limited to smartphone manufacturers. It will also affect companies that create standalone AI devices. Because if iPhone Fold becomes a full-fledged AI companion, the need for separate devices may decrease. And this creates competition even for players like OpenAI, which, according to rumors, is also working on its own hardware. But Apple is playing differently again. It is not creating a new market from scratch. It is transforming an existing one, and that is far more powerful. Now let's talk about what comes next. If iPhone Fold turns out to be successful, it could trigger a chain reaction. Apple will begin to develop this category, reduce the cost of technologies, and integrate them into other devices. And within a few years, the Fold format could become the new standard. This sounds ambitious, but if you look at history, Apple has done this before. iPhone changed phones, iPad changed tablets, Apple Watch changed the wearable market, and now there is a feeling that the company is preparing for the next step. But this step is the most risky of all, because it affects the core product. And that is exactly why iPhone Fold is being watched so closely. It is not just a new device. It is the moment when it becomes clear what the future will look like. And if Apple does everything right, we may see not just a new iPhone, but the beginning of a new era of devices, where the boundaries between form factors disappear, and artificial intelligence becomes not a feature, but the foundation of the entire user experience. And this is exactly the point where the industry stands right now. And there is one more important aspect that is talked about less so far, but it may turn out to be decisive. It is about how iPhone Fold fits into Apple's broader strategy of moving away from the classic screen as the center of interaction. Because the foldable format is not the final goal, but an intermediate stage. It is a way to prepare users for a more flexible and less display-dependent experience. According to the latest insider reports, inside Apple scenarios are already being considered where iPhone Fold becomes a kind of control center for other devices. For example, it could act as the main computing module, while interaction shifts to other forms, glasses, bracelets, external displays. And in this case, the foldable screen is needed not just for convenience, but as a transitional interface between the familiar smartphone and future devices. And if you look at it from this perspective, it becomes clear why Apple took so long to release a foldable device. Because for it, this is not just a new form factor. It is part of a larger architecture, where each device plays its own role. And this is where the true potential of iPhone Fold is revealed. It can become not only a new product, but also a connecting element of the entire ecosystem. The very device that combines the functions of multiple categories at once and at the same time opens the path to the next ones. And if that is indeed the case, then what we are witnessing now is not just preparation for the release of a new iPhone. We are witnessing the beginning of a restructuring of Apple's entire product lineup, where each next device will look less like a traditional smartphone and more like a personal intelligence system built around the user. In recent months, rumors about a project that many had already considered permanently canceled have begun to reappear in the tech industry. This refers to the Apple Car, the mysterious vehicle from Apple that was discussed for nearly 10 years but never officially unveiled. And while most analysts previously believed that the company had completely shut down development, the situation is now unexpectedly changing. Several former Apple engineers, as well as sources within Asian supply chains, have begun claiming that the project is not only still alive, but has also received a new lease of life following internal leadership changes at the company. According to one engineer who previously worked on Apple's automotive platform, discussions about timelines for the first electric vehicle have resumed within the corporation, and the team responsible for transportation technologies has allegedly been significantly expanded. Moreover, according to insiders, Apple is now viewing the car not as an ordinary means of transportation, but as the next stage of its ecosystem, intended to become as revolutionary a device as the iPhone once was. This is precisely why excitement around Apple Car is resurfacing again. Many analysts are already comparing the situation to the period when the first rumors about the iPhone emerged. Back then, few believed that Apple could transform an industry already dominated by Nokia, Motorola, and BlackBerry. But Apple managed to completely reshape the mobile phone market. And now, more and more experts believe the company may be preparing to repeat the same scenario, this time in the automotive industry. This is especially relevant given the rapid growth of the electric vehicle market and the aggressive expansion of Chinese manufacturers globally. BYD, Xiaomi, NIO, XPeng, Geely, and dozens of other Chinese companies have in just a few years become a dominant force in the industry. China has already become the world's largest producer of electric vehicles, and many Western automakers are increasingly struggling to compete in terms of price, technology, and development speed. This is why Apple's potential entry could represent a major shock for the entire industry. According to several insiders, the company is now discussing an entirely new philosophy of the automobile. Apple allegedly does not want to release just another electric car. Instead, it views Apple Car as a next-generation device that would combine artificial intelligence, the Apple ecosystem, autonomous driving, a personal assistant, and even elements of augmented reality. And if leaks are accurate, the first Apple Car could look far more futuristic than any modern vehicle. Sources from South Korea and Taiwan claim that Apple is testing a completely new body design inspired by the minimalism of Vision Pro and modern Tesla concepts. The vehicle may feature a fully smooth body without a traditional grille, hidden doors, a panoramic glass roof, and highly unusual LED lighting that forms a single continuous light strip across the entire body. Some designers who previously collaborated with Apple say the company wants the car to appear visually as clean as possible, as if it were an object from the future. Inside, Apple Car could completely redefine the concept of a traditional car interior. According to rumors, Apple is exploring a cabin concept without a conventional dashboard. Instead of dozens of physical buttons and screens, the company aims to create a unified digital environment controlled by voice, gestures, and a next-generation AI version of Siri. The central interface could be built around a massive flexible OLED display spanning nearly the entire front of the cabin. Furthermore, Apple is allegedly testing an augmented reality projection system capable of displaying navigation, alerts, and interface elements directly onto the windshield, effectively allowing the driver to see a digital layer over the real road. In essence, the driver would perceive a digital world superimposed onto physical reality. Some analysts have already called this an iPhone on wheels, but inside Apple, the car appears to be seen as something even more ambitious. The company allegedly believes that Apple Car could become the first truly intelligent machine, where artificial intelligence is not an additional function, but the foundation of the entire system. The next generation Siri may evolve into a full-fledged digital assistant that will know the owner's habits, automatically build routes, adapt climate control, music, lighting, and even driving style. In essence, the car may begin to behave like a living device. What is especially interesting is that Apple is allegedly placing a huge bet specifically on its own AI chips. After the success of Apple Silicon processors, the company gained a colossal advantage. The M chips have already destroyed competition in the laptop market in terms of energy efficiency, and now Apple can use a similar architecture in the car. According to some insiders, the company is working on an ultra-powerful automotive processor that will be responsible simultaneously for autonomous driving, sensor processing, AI functions, and multimedia system. This can give Apple a huge advantage over competitors, because most car manufacturers use third-party solutions. This is where the most interesting part begins. Many analysts believe that Apple Car can become the most technologically advanced car in the world. According to Bloomberg and a number of Asian suppliers, the company has already been testing its own LiDAR systems, cameras, and neural networks for autonomous driving for several years. And if Apple really brings the system to a high level, the car may receive almost a full next-generation autopilot. Some sources claim that Apple wants to implement a passenger mode where the driver will be able to actually hand over control to the car on most roads. But autonomous driving is one of the main reasons for the project delays. According to former employees inside Apple, there were constant conflicts between teams. One part of the leadership wanted to release a more traditional electric car and enter the market faster. The other insisted on a much more revolutionary product with almost full autopilot. Because of this, the project repeatedly changed direction. In different years, Apple even allegedly discussed buying Tesla, partnership with Hyundai, Kia, and other manufacturers. However, none of these options were ever realized. At the same time, the market situation is changing very quickly. Chinese companies are literally flooding the market with new electric car models. Xiaomi in a very short time managed to create enormous hype around its SU7. BYD continues aggressive expansion. Tesla is facing growing competition. European automotive giants are losing market share. And at this very moment, Apple may see a window of opportunity. Some experts believe Apple deliberately waited for the right moment. The company never likes entering a market first. Apple prefers to observe, analyze mistakes of competitors, and then release a product that sharply raises the standard of quality and user experience. This is exactly how it was with iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods, and iPad. And now many are confident that the company may repeat the same approach with cars. If the latest leaks are to be believed, the first Apple car may have a range of more than 800 kilometers thanks to a new battery architecture. Some analysts even suggest the use of solid-state batteries, which are currently considered the holy grail of the entire automotive industry. Such batteries can potentially charge much faster, be safer, and provide higher energy density. If Apple really becomes the first to mass implement such technology, it may become a real revolution. In addition, the car may receive deep integration with the Apple ecosystem. Imagine a car that automatically synchronizes with iPhone, Apple Watch, Vision Pro, and home devices. You approach the car, and it already knows your route. Apple Watch automatically opens the doors. Vision Pro becomes an entertainment system for passengers. Siri continues a conversation started at home. Music, calls, messages, work files. Everything would function as a single unified space. In essence, Apple wants to turn the car into part of a person's digital life. The Apple Car could have a particularly strong impact on the premium segment of the market. Many people are willing to overpay for Apple products not because of specifications, but because of user experience, design, and status. And this is why some analysts believe that even a price range of $80,000 to $120,000 would not stop demand. Moreover, if Apple manages to create a truly unique vehicle, waiting lists could stretch for years. Some experts even believe that Apple Car could destroy the traditional concept of car ownership. The company may place a huge bet on subscriptions and services. For example, part of the AI functions, autopilot, premium modes, and cloud capabilities could operate on a monthly subscription model. This already exists in the industry, but Apple is capable of taking such a system to an entirely new level. But despite all the hype, there are still a huge number of problems surrounding the project. First of all, manufacturing a car is much more complex than manufacturing smartphones. Apple has never produced cars. The company would have to build massive logistics, create factories, or find manufacturing partners. Secondly, the electric vehicle industry is currently going through a very difficult period. Many companies are facing falling demand, price wars, and profitability issues. In addition, regulators remain a major problem. Apple's autopilot will almost certainly face strict scrutiny in the United States, Europe, and China. Any accident could trigger a large-scale scandal, and if Apple truly wants to implement near-autonomous driving, the company will have to prove the safety of the technology across millions of test kilometers. In the coming years, the world may face the largest technological revolution since the arrival of smartphones. And while just a few years ago, humanoid robots seemed like something distant, experimental, and accessible only to the largest corporations or military laboratories, the situation is now changing literally before our eyes. More and more analysts, engineers, and even former employees of the biggest technology companies are saying that the mass market for humanoid robots is practically ready. And this is not about a few expensive models for wealthy people, but about millions of robots of many different categories that ordinary families will be able to afford. Home assistants, industrial workers, companion robots, caregivers, security robots, couriers, business assistants, robots for stores, restaurants, hotels, and even for intellectual professions. All of this is now being actively prepared for market release. And the most interesting part is that, according to several Western publications, the world's largest technology companies have already begun discussing not the very existence of such robots, but exactly how the process of mass selling them to people will look. This is where Apple suddenly found itself at the center of attention. Although the company officially comments on its projects very cautiously, over the past few months several authoritative sources have reported that active work is indeed underway inside the corporation on several humanoid robot directions at once. Moreover, according to insiders, Apple sees robots not as a separate experiment, but as an entirely new category of devices that could eventually become even more important than the iPhone. And if the leaks are to be believed, the company is already discussing concepts for home assistant robots, companion robots, intelligent office assistants, industrial logistics models, and even specialized humanoid platforms for healthcare and elderly care. Some employees allegedly call this the next Apple ecosystem, where the robot becomes as common a device as a smartphone or laptop. Apple's main advantage over competitors right now is not artificial intelligence technology at all. Many experts are convinced that the company possesses a far more powerful weapon: its enormous global network of branded stores. According to analysts, this could completely reshape the robot market. While other companies may be forced to sell their humanoids online or through rare demonstration centers, Apple could potentially transform every one of its stores into a true center of interaction between humans and AI robots. According to several technology bloggers familiar with internal discussions, company leadership is considering making the process of buying a robot as simple as purchasing an iPhone or MacBook today. And this could become the decisive factor that allows Apple to begin mass deployment of humanoids faster than anyone else. Imagine a massive Apple flagship store of the future somewhere in New York, Tokyo, Dubai, Shanghai, or London. From the outside, everything looks familiar. Glass minimalist design, a huge company logo, bright lighting, hundreds of visitors. But inside, the store is completely different. Instead of tables filled with phones, there are enormous demonstration areas where humanoid robots move around freely. One robot helps visitors navigate the store, another interacts with children, a third demonstrates home cleaning capabilities, a fourth prepares coffee or sorts groceries. In a separate area, industrial models are showcased that can carry heavy loads, work in warehouses, and even perform complex manufacturing tasks. Nearby are companion robots capable of holding conversations, reading news, helping with schedules, monitoring the owner's health, and even synchronizing with smart home devices. According to insiders, Apple wants to turn its stores not simply into places of sale, but into real-world testing grounds for robots. A potential buyer will be able to come with their entire family and literally spend several hours interacting with a humanoid. The robot will be able to give tours around the store, answer questions, execute commands, help carry purchases, prepare food in a demonstration kitchen, play with children, or even accompany the client throughout the shopping mall. And only after that will the person make a purchase decision. Some analysts are already calling this a revolution of trust, because the biggest fear most people have today is uncertainty. People do not understand how a robot will behave at home. That is why companies want to give customers the opportunity to essentially live alongside a robot for at least a few hours before buying one. Interestingly, according to several journalists, Apple is even discussing a system of personal robot adaptation directly inside the store. After the purchase, a person will be able to activate their humanoid assistant on site. The robot will synchronize with the owner's account, learn their voice, habits, and schedule, connect to smart home devices, and within just a few minutes become a full-fledged digital assistant for the family. Moreover, according to rumors, the company is considering an option where the robot, after activation, will be able to walk out together with its owner on its own. This exact moment is now being actively discussed on social networks and technology forums. People are literally fascinated by the idea that in the near future, a person could walk out of a store together with their own humanoid robot, as naturally as people today walk out carrying a new iPhone in a bag. But the most important question concerns price. Price will determine how quickly robots spread across the world. And here insiders speak of a very interesting strategy. According to preliminary information, companies plan to divide the market into several categories. The simplest home assistant robots could cost between $5,000 and $10,000. These would be relatively compact models designed for cleaning, basic household assistance, object delivery, security monitoring, and smart home interaction. More advanced humanoid companions with sophisticated artificial intelligence, full communication abilities, and learning capabilities could cost between $15,000 and $25,000. And professional versions for business, medicine, or engineering tasks could be priced at $50,000 to $100,000 or more. At the same time, companies fully understand that not every person will be able to immediately buy such a robot. That is why, according to analysts, subscription and financing programs are now being actively discussed. Some technology experts suggest that robots may be sold almost like automobiles. A buyer could arrange installment payments over several years, while the monthly payment would be comparable to payments for a car or an expensive smartphone. Moreover, some companies are considering robot rental subscriptions. For example, a person could pay $200 to $500 per month and receive a home assistant with regular software updates and technical maintenance. Special attention is currently being devoted to service infrastructure. And here, Apple once again gains a huge advantage thanks to its stores and service centers. According to sources, the company is considering the idea of creating special robotic service zones inside Apple stores. Customers would be able to bring in a damaged robot, replace broken parts, update software, or perform full diagnostics. Moreover, many procedures could reportedly be completed within just a few hours. Some insiders even claim that the company is testing the concept of automated repair capsules, where the robot would independently undergo diagnostics without human involvement. In addition, the possibility of mobile home repair teams is being discussed. If a robot stops functioning or becomes damaged, the owner could call engineers through an application. A specialized team would arrive at the home and perform repairs directly on site. Analysts believe that exactly this kind of infrastructure will become a mandatory part of the future humanoid robot market. People must understand that a robot is not a disposable device, but a full-fledged piece of technology with support and service. A separate issue is safety and regulation, and here the situation is far more complicated than with smartphones or electric vehicles. Already now, future laws for humanoid robots are being actively discussed in the United States, Europe, and Asia. Regulators are trying to understand how to certify robots, what restrictions to introduce, who will bear responsibility for the actions of AI, and how to protect people from possible system errors. According to several Western publications, companies are already holding closed consultations with governments from different countries. Discussions include rules for robot behavior in public spaces, safety standards, emergency shutdown systems, and even mandatory insurance. Some analysts suggest that the first mass-market humanoids will receive strict software restrictions. For example, a robot may not be able to harm a human, use dangerous objects without owner confirmation, or leave a certain area without permission. Moreover, the industry is actively discussing the idea of digital identifiers. Every robot would have a unique number, a remote monitoring system, and the ability to be emergency blocked in dangerous situations. Essentially, this would be a combination of a smartphone, a car, and complex industrial equipment at the same time. But despite the concerns, demand for robots could turn out to be enormous. According to forecasts from some investment funds, the humanoid market could grow into a multi-trillion-dollar industry within the next 10 years. The reason is simple. Robots will be able to perform a huge number of tasks that people spend hours on every day. Home cleaning, food preparation, childcare and elderly care, warehouse work, goods delivery, retail assistance, hotel service, restaurant work. All of this represents an enormous market. The companion robot market could become especially interesting. Analysts are already recording rising loneliness in developed countries. Millions of people live alone, experience a lack of communication, and need constant support. That is why many companies are betting on humanoids capable of maintaining conversations, recognizing emotions, and becoming part of a person's everyday life. Right now, one of the most unexpected scenarios in recent years is beginning to take shape in the technology market. According to insiders and analysts, Apple is preparing not just to release its first foldable iPhone, the company may be preparing an entire lineup of fold devices, and one of the most ambitious products in this lineup could be the first iPad Fold in history. If these leaks are confirmed, this will not just be a new gadget, it could become a real shock for the industry. Because right now the foldable device market is effectively controlled by companies like Samsung and Huawei, which have been developing foldable smartphones for several years. But at the same time, a fully fledged foldable tablet that looks like a finished product still does not exist. And this is exactly where Apple could make its signature move, not catching up with the market, but immediately jumping ahead of it. Because according to available data, the iPad Fold is not just an enlarged foldable smartphone, it is a completely different class of device. According to preliminary information, the device may feature a display of approximately 13 to 15 inches when unfolded, which is already at the level of a laptop, while remaining compact and portable when folded. And the key point here is that Apple will most likely rely on a completely new type of display, without a visible crease. This is one of the main problems of all current foldable devices, as even flagship models from Samsung still have a noticeable crease, while Apple, according to rumors, does not want to release a product until it can fully solve this issue. And if it succeeds, this will become one of its main advantages at launch. But even more interesting is how Apple may implement the usage scenario of such a device, because the iPad Fold could potentially replace several devices at once, including a tablet, a laptop, and even partially a workstation. Imagine a device that in its folded state is used as a classic iPad. You can hold it in your hands, consume content, work with applications, but once you unfold it, you get a huge screen on which you can work in multiple applications simultaneously, edit videos, work on documents, or even use a full desktop-like interface. And this is where iPadOS comes into play, as Apple has been gradually transforming it into a more powerful and flexible system over the past few years, adding multitasking features, improving window management, and introducing elements that bring it closer to macOS. And the iPad Fold could become the device for which all of this was originally designed. If we go even deeper, it becomes clear that Apple may completely rethink the way users interact with the device. For example, in the folded state, one part of the screen could function as an interactive keyboard with adaptive feedback, while in the unfolded state, the user gets a full-fledged workspace without limitations. There is also discussion about the use of a new generation stylus, as Apple Pencil may gain additional features specifically tailored for a large foldable display, including more precise graphics work, new tools for designers, and even support for advanced scenarios in 3D. Hardware is also a separate topic, as such a device will most likely receive one of the most powerful Apple Silicon chips, possibly at the level of Apple M3 or an even more advanced version, which automatically makes the iPad Fold not just a tablet, but a full-fledged work tool capable of competing with laptops. And this already changes the very philosophy of the device, because if earlier the iPad was perceived as a complement to the Mac, now it may become its replacement, especially for users who value mobility and versatility. It is also important to understand that Apple may introduce new camera usage formats. For example, the front camera could be embedded under the display, allowing the screen to remain completely seamless without cutouts. while the main camera could be used not only for shooting but also for spatial scanning, augmented reality applications, and the creation of 3D content. Another important point is battery life. A large foldable display requires a serious battery, and here Apple will most likely use a distributed battery system built into both halves of the device, which will allow it to maintain weight balance and ensure stable operation throughout the entire day. It is also possible that new materials will be used, such as reinforced glass or hybrid composites that are both durable and flexible, which is critically important for foldable devices because durability is one of the key factors that has so far held back their mass adoption. But the most interesting part begins when you look at this device from the perspective of the ecosystem, because the iPad Fold could become the central element of the entire Apple ecosystem, interacting with the iPhone, Mac, Apple Watch, and other devices to create a unified digital space. For example, you could start working on a Mac, continue on the iPad Fold in its unfolded state, and then quickly switch to an iPhone. And although this is already partially implemented, with the arrival of such a device, the process could become completely seamless. And this is exactly where Apple may gain a huge advantage, because competitors can build good devices, but replicating Apple's ecosystem is much more difficult. If we talk about the impact on the industry, the scenario could be very interesting, because the arrival of the iPad Fold may create an entirely new category of devices, which is neither a smartphone nor a tablet in the traditional sense, but a hybrid that combines multiple formats at once. And if Apple truly sets a quality standard in this segment, other companies will be forced to adapt, as Samsung and Huawei will most likely accelerate the development of their own equivalents. But catching up with Apple will not be easy, especially if it delivers a crease-free solution with perfectly optimized software. This could also impact the laptop market, because if the iPad Fold can replace part of the usage scenarios of a MacBook, it may change the structure of sales and force users to rethink their habits. Another important point is price, as such a device will most likely be very expensive, possibly even more expensive than top MacBook models. But Apple has repeatedly shown that users are willing to pay for innovation if it truly feels meaningful. As a result, we get a very interesting picture where Apple may enter the foldable device market, not with just one product but with an entire strategy, with the iPhone Fold becoming the first step, but the iPad Fold potentially becoming the device that changes the rules of the game. And if all of this really happens, we may witness the beginning of a new era, an era in which the boundaries between devices are finally blurred, where one device replaces several at once, and where form factor no longer limits user capabilities. And then the main question will no longer be whether you need a foldable tablet, but whether you are ready to switch to a completely new format of interaction with technology. And if you look even deeper, it becomes obvious that Apple may go beyond conventional hardware and focus on artificial intelligence as a key part of this device, because a large foldable screen opens up entirely new scenarios for working with AI. Imagine that the iPad Fold in its unfolded state becomes not just a display, but a full-fledged working environment where artificial intelligence assists you in real time, automatically arranging windows, suggesting actions, analyzing content, and even anticipating what you are going to do next. And here Apple could leverage its developments in local AI, emphasizing privacy and speed without constant internet connectivity, which could become another strong differentiator from competitors, because most modern AI solutions rely on the cloud, while Apple could offer a faster and more secure approach directly on the device. And if all of this comes together in a single product, the iPad Fold could become not just another step forward, but the device after which the market will no longer be able to go back. Right now, something is beginning to happen in the technology industry that until recently seemed impossible, and more insiders are saying that Apple is preparing not just a single foldable smartphone, but an entire new category of devices that could completely change the personal electronics market. This is no longer just about the iPhone Fold that we discussed earlier, but about a much broader strategy that is taking shape right now and gradually becoming clearer through leaks and analytics. According to the latest data, Apple is simultaneously developing several foldable devices, and among them appears one of the most unexpected projects: foldable watches, tentatively called Apple Watch Fold. And if this information is confirmed, it could become one of the biggest technological shocks of recent years, because at the moment, no major player, including Samsung or Huawei, has even come close to creating such a form factor. And here it is important to understand that Apple is not simply trying to catch up with the foldable device market. It is trying to completely reinvent it and set a new standard that others will be forced to follow in the future. According to sources, the concept of Apple Watch Fold is built around the idea of transformation and adaptability. In its normal mode, it is a classic compact watch with a familiar design, a minimalist interface, and high battery life, which does not reveal its hidden functionality. But the key feature is that the device's display is capable of unfolding, turning into a full mini monitor, and this is already a completely different level of interaction with the device. Imagine raising your hand, and instead of a small watch screen, a wider display unfolds in front of you, on which you can fully work with notifications, read long messages without scrolling, view maps, use applications, and even watch video in a basic format. Essentially, Apple could create a device that combines a watch, a communicator, and a compact next-generation personal display. And this radically changes usage scenarios, because currently a watch is an addition to a smartphone, an auxiliary gadget that only duplicates part of its functions. But in the case of Apple Watch Fold, it could become a standalone device capable of handling a significant portion of everyday tasks without needing to take out a phone, and this is one of the key points highlighted by insiders. Apple has long been moving toward reducing dependence on the iPhone, gradually increasing the autonomy of its devices, and such products could become the next logical step in this strategy. From a technical point of view, this is an extremely complex project, which is why it generates so much interest. The main challenge is creating a reliable foldable display that can withstand thousands or even hundreds of thousands of opening and closing cycles, while remaining thin, bright, and energy efficient. Here, Apple will likely use new generations of flexible OLED or even micro-LED panels, which the company has been developing for several years, and which can provide higher brightness, better color accuracy, and lower power consumption. The second important aspect is the folding mechanism. Unlike smartphones, watches are much smaller, which means the requirements for precision, miniaturization, and structural durability become even higher. And this is exactly where Apple may apply its signature engineering solutions that we have already seen in MacBook, iPhone, and other company products. It is also important to consider battery life, which becomes critically important in such a device, because increasing the screen size automatically increases power consumption, meaning Apple will have to find new ways of optimization, which could include the use of higher density batteries, new charging technologies, and deep optimization at the operating system level. And it is possible that we will see a redesigned version of watchOS that adapts to the changing screen size in real time. In the folded state, it is classic widgets and notifications. In the unfolded state, it becomes a full interface with extended capabilities, resembling a mini tablet. And this opens up huge potential for developers, because a new type of device appears for which completely new applications can be created. These can be advanced messengers, mini browsers, full-featured maps, next-level fitness interfaces, as well as tools for work and creativity. And if Apple properly opens this market for developers, the app ecosystem can grow very quickly, just as it already did with the iPhone and Apple Watch in the past. The design aspect also deserves special attention, because design often becomes the key factor in the success of Apple products. According to rumors, the company is focusing on an ultra-thin body, premium materials, and perfect fit of all elements. This could be a combination of titanium, sapphire glass, and flexible composite materials that provide both strength and lightness. At the same time, the device must remain comfortable for everyday wear, not too heavy or bulky. And this is one of the most difficult tasks, because increasing functionality almost always leads to an increase in size, but Apple will try to maintain the balance. If we talk about the impact on the market, the appearance of such a device could seriously change the balance of power, because at the moment the foldable device market is mainly controlled by Samsung, which has been developing this direction for several years. But the emergence of a new form factor that no one else has can give Apple a huge advantage. This will not just be another device. This will be a new category that can set the trend for the coming years. And here it is important to remember how Apple has acted in the past. The company rarely implements a technology first, but when it does, it brings it to a state where it becomes mass market. This was the case with the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and AirPods. And now we may be witnessing an attempt to repeat this scenario in the foldable device segment. At the same time, it is important to understand that at the moment this is still an early stage of development. Insiders emphasize that the project is in an active testing phase, and the company is trying several prototypes at once with different mechanisms and form factors. Some of them may never see the light of day. Apple is known for shutting down even very promising projects if they do not meet its standards of quality and user experience. But the very fact that the company is working on such a device already says a lot. This means that the industry is moving toward new form factors, and foldable devices are only the beginning. In the future, we may see even more radical solutions, including devices without screens, holographic interfaces, and completely new ways of interacting with technology. And Apple, apparently, wants to be at the center of this transformation. That is why the coming years may become some of the most interesting in the history of technology. And if Apple really introduces not only iPhone Fold and iPad Fold, but also Apple Watch Fold, this could mark the beginning of a new era in which familiar devices will cease to be what we know today, and the boundaries between categories will begin to blur, creating a completely new experience for users around the world. Ultimately, the success of Apple Watch Fold will depend not on the number of folds, but on how organically the device can disappear on the wrist in its folded state and transform into a real tool when needed. If the company manages to achieve the perfect balance between compactness, reliability, and sudden functionality, it will not just release a new product, it will create a habit that did not exist before. And then, in a few years, we will be surprised not that a watch can unfold, but how we ever lived without such a natural transition from checking the time to using a full-fledged mini-computer on the wrist. Imagine a situation in which the smartphone is no longer the main device in your life. You don't take it out every 5 minutes, you don't constantly look at the screen, and you don't depend on notifications, yet you remain fully connected to the digital world. This is exactly the kind of future that Apple is moving toward today, and it could become one of the biggest technological shifts of the past decade. Right now, Apple is actively working on a new category of devices united by one idea: to remove the screen from the center of interaction and replace it with artificial intelligence. This is not just a concept, but a full-fledged strategy. The company understands that smartphones have reached their development ceiling, and further improvements no longer deliver the same effect as before. That is why Apple is searching for a new form factor that can become the next step after the iPhone. According to available information, Apple is developing several devices at once. Some of them we have already discussed earlier, and not all of them will make it to release, because the company traditionally tests many ideas, selecting only those that perfectly fit its philosophy. But among all these developments, there is one particularly interesting candidate: a compact AI keychain with a built-in next-generation Siri system. At first glance, this device looks extremely simple: a small body, neat rounded edges, a minimalist display, and a signature lighting system that softly responds to user actions. But behind this simplicity lies Apple's key idea: to remove everything unnecessary and leave only the essence. This device does not try to replace the smartphone through a screen, it does so through intelligence. The main difference of this gadget is that it does not require constant visual interaction. You are not supposed to look at it, you simply use it as an extension of yourself. Voice, context, habits, all of this becomes part of the interface. Siri in this device is no longer just a voice assistant, but a full-fledged system that understands you on a much deeper level. Apple will most likely integrate a new generation of its AI chips here, which will process most tasks directly on the device. This means instant response, high privacy, and independence from the internet in basic scenarios. Such an approach could become a key advantage for Apple compared to competitors that rely on cloud computing. Speaking about possible specifications, the device may feature several directional microphones with advanced noise cancellation to accurately recognize voice even in noisy environments. It is also reasonable to expect a compact speaker capable of delivering clear and directed sound, possibly even using bone conduction technology for more private interaction. In addition, the device will almost certainly be equipped with an ultra-wideband chip, which will allow it to precisely determine its position in space and interact with other devices. This opens up a huge number of scenarios, such as automatic smart home control, interaction with a car, finding lost items, and much more. Battery life also deserves special attention. Apple understands that such a device must work for a long time, so we can expect the use of highly efficient components and an optimized power consumption system, which will allow the device to operate for several days without recharging despite constant activity. Now let's talk about the most interesting part, how this device could change everyday life. Imagine that you leave your home without a phone. You do not feel that you have forgotten something. All the main functions remain with you. You can send messages, get information, control devices, and receive prompts in real time. At the same time, interaction becomes as natural as possible. You do not open applications, you do not switch between screens, and you do not search for the necessary function. You simply formulate a task, and the system executes it for you. This is a fundamentally different level of interaction, closer to human communication than to the traditional use of technology. However, Apple is not the only company moving in this direction. Samsung is also actively developing AI in its devices and experimenting with new form factors. OpenAI, according to rumors, is working on its own physical device built around artificial intelligence. This means that in the coming years, we will see serious competition in a new category. Nevertheless, Apple has one huge advantage: its ecosystem. The company already controls millions of devices, and a new gadget can easily integrate into this system, strengthening it and creating additional value for the user. This may become the decisive factor in the battle for the market. It is important to understand that Apple will not abruptly abandon smartphones. Most likely, we will see a gradual transition. At first, such devices will complement the iPhone, then take on more and more functions, and at some point may fully replace it for some users. Speaking about timing, there is a possibility that Apple could present the first devices from this lineup in the near future, possibly by the end of the year. But even if that happens, it will only be the beginning. The real revolution will take several years, and if even 70% of this vision is realized, we may witness the emergence of a new era in technology, where devices become smaller, smarter, and more invisible, and the main focus shifts from the gadget itself to the intelligence behind it. This is what the entire tech world appears to be watching right now. But there is another important aspect that almost no one talks about, and it may become the key factor in the success or failure of such devices. It is user trust in artificial intelligence. Because the smarter the device becomes, the more data it processes, the deeper it understands a person, and the more the question arises: how comfortable it is for a user to live alongside such an all-seeing assistant. Apple has traditionally emphasized privacy, and in the case of such an AI keychain, this becomes not just an advantage, but a necessity. Most likely, the company will strongly promote the idea of on-device data processing, where most of the information remains on the device and is not sent to the cloud. This could become a major differentiator from competitors' solutions, and at the same time, a powerful marketing tool. In addition, such a device opens up an entirely new market for accessories and integrations. Imagine that this keychain becomes the control center not only for digital services, but also for the physical world around you. Smart doors, cars, security systems, household appliances, all of this could be connected to one small device that is always with you. It is also possible that Apple will introduce personalization at a completely new level. The device may adapt to the user's character, habits, communication style, and even emotional state. Over time, it will become more and more tailored to you, more precise and predictable, creating the feeling not just of a gadget, but of a true digital companion. Looking further ahead, it becomes clear that such devices are only the first step. In the future, they may evolve into wearable solutions integrated directly into clothing or even into the human body. What once seemed like science fiction now looks like a logical continuation of current trends. That is why today's AI keychain is not just an experiment by Apple, but a potential starting point of a new technological era. An era in which devices disappear from view but become closer to humans than ever before. And at this point, everything will be decided not by power or design, but by how seamlessly and organically the technology can integrate into everyday life without creating a feeling of control or dependency. If Apple manages to achieve this balance, we will, for the first time, get a device that does not demand attention, yet constantly enhances the human being. And only then will it become clear, the era of screens is truly approaching its logical end.